Hi everyone. Thanks for joining me and Ronit Plank, who will be here shortly, for our first memoir chat. We foresee it, or we imagine it, as sort of like a memoir support group where we can talk. Ronit and I will ask each other a couple questions. If you have any questions for us, feel free to ask, and then we're gonna do like a quick 5-minute writing exercise if we all want to do that together. That's our plan for this. Also, I don't know if anyone else has read this Bodywork by Melissa Febos. I highly recommend it. Ronit and I are both actually reading it right now. It's just such a great. Melissa Febos is so inspiring. Hi,
Hey!
Ronit. I was just talking about Bodywork,
Yes, yes. Look,
and how
look at
how
this.
inspiring. I was saying we were
It's
reading
just
it.
an ad. It's just an ad for body work. Am I too loud? Am I too loud?
You're good, I think.
Okay,
Am,
good.
am I too loud?
No, I am too loud. Always, I am too loud.
No, I don't. I think you're so like
When,
on your podcast. You're very like,
oh, good. That's
yes,
good because I'm like, am I blasting your eardrums when I talk to people? I'm like, am I blasting? And actually, two guests this week were like, I guess you could go a little lower.
Oh,
So it's just anyway. Look at the people. Hi, everyone.
hi,
For
that's my
joining.
mom is here.
Oh, is she Zora the zebra?
She
How
is.
adorable is that? Hi,
That
Zora.
was her name when I was a kid. Her name was Zora. So,
That's not, oh, okay. Another
yep.
story. Another
That's a
story, Mom.
that's a story for another time.
I
Maybe a
also
memoir
invited
story.
my mom, but she's,
Oh, fun.
I don't know if she knows how to do this. I've talked to her about it a lot. And then she said, but will people be able to see me? And I said, no, it's
Mm-hmm.
totally private. So I don't know if she'll remember. Anyhow.
You're safe, Ronit's mom, if you show up. So I was just saying our format is just we're gonna say hello, ask each other a couple of questions, do a
Yeah.
writing prompt that we kind of imagine it as like a memoir support group. That's all.
Yeah. Right. Which we could have, I guess, said that
Called
in
it that?
Did you wait, Allison? Did you want to call it that? And you were like, "Why are you calling it memoir
No,
chat?"
no. I titles are always a little. This is a good memoir conversation.
Yeah.
Actually, I find titles very challenging, and
Mm,
because people always want like a snappy title, and the
yeah.
trend right now is these sort of like body work. Just very short.
Wait,
Um,
I'm gonna put you on the spot. What other? I gotta
oh
know, like,
man.
what other things are snappy like that that you're thinking of? Body
Well,
work.
I just read Range, which is
Okay.
about range. I, I'm sure I could just go through the
On
books
the
that I've
nose.
read
Yeah.
recently,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
which is funny because there is that pressure to have these sort of titles, but then they're very difficult to search.
Oh, interesting. Are they really? A lot of things come up. Is
Yeah,
that what
like
you mean?
lots of
Like,
times there are these one. I mean, like Wild's a perfect example. I mean, I know
yeah.
that's 10 years ago, as you were talking about with Jane Friedman on your wonderful podcast.
Thank you.
But I still think that's kind of the template that a lot of people use. Is
I guess
that like
so.
Wild?
I didn't get the
Imagine if
memo.
you Googled
Hi, Melissa
Wild.
Gould. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi,
Oh,
everyone.
she's a good example too.
Hi, girl.
Widowish.
Hi. Guess what? We're gonna go do Clooney. I'm coming in July, by the way. I didn't tell you
Okay.
yet, Melissa. But I was gonna just say that I didn't get the memo because my titles are really long. Like my short story collection coming up is Home is a Made Up Place, and my memoir is When She Comes Back. Like I have very long titles, it seems these days. So I did not get the memo on that. But hey,
It's
Marissa.
something I've heard, and I was just saying, just so Melissa knows why I'm name checking her. I was talking about snappy one word titles, and
Like
Melissa has one
widowish.
hmm that are
Yeah,
very descriptive. You know what the whole book's about,
it's
but
true. And also like Amanda Montell, cultish,
exactly.
totally. All right, you're right. Also, wait a minute, what's wrong with me? What is
Lisa,
Ash?
titles are a struggle. Lisa just said I'm very bad at
Yes,
titles.
I
Lisa,
can either
they're
get them or I don't. Wait, what is wrong with me? What's Ashley? Um, what's that
swing,
one? You swing, of course,
swing.
and then the other Ashley. You guys, Smash Frizzle, Smash. You know who I'm talking about. It's a newer memoir, and it's also a beautiful cover. Anyway, I'll get to it. It's upstairs somewhere. This is my area where it's not all my books in my office because up there it's loud with dogs. This is the little basement area. So I guess should we stop? Like, should we start? Like,
Riffing.
yeah, are we riffing too much, or I don't know.
Well, what's your question, or what? How did this come about? I guess we should say that.
I know.
Like,
How did
how
this come
did?
about? Oh yeah. Okay. So
You like brainstorming titles, Marissa? We should do an episode on brainstorming titles, and we each come
Yeah.
with our like sentence, because I find it's easier to think up titles in a creative conversational way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so for me, I find that I'm either completely flummoxed by it and I cannot come up with one to save my life, or it just hits me. Like I have a
I'm
short
jealous of
story.
that.
I have a short story where it just hit me and I was like, oh, and I'm still proud of that. But other times it's like it takes a while. And actually, I'm a big fan, although now we're switching into this being about titles. I'm a big fan of looking through my essay or looking through my piece and using a section of a sentence as a title, because it's sort of in progress. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's about something. It's not exactly on the nose, but it's
Mm-hmm.
sort of in movement, you know what I mean? And so I like
Mm-hmm.
that because it makes you say as a reader, like, huh, what's this going to be about, you know? Like I have a piece out that's on submission right now called Finally Reduced, and
Mm.
that's actually from the piece. And so I was like, I would read that because I'd be like, what is this about? Why is it like that? That's a weird section of a sentence to use. So, hey, there she is. Hey, Beth. Okay, so the way this came about is that we were talking because you were a guest on my podcast, The Body Myth, and
Mm-hmm.
we've just been talking a lot lately, which has been a gift. I'm so glad that we have. And I said, I think it would be fun to do a live about talking. Let's do some memoir live stuff, like as a support, or just sort of like a vent session, or just a way to like kind of, because all of us are so alone when we write, for the most part, unless you're doing group writing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to sort of just air our grievances, or just like, why is it so hard to do this thing, or this is something I found that I love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And memoir is really the sweet spot for me right now. I just love it, and I've spent a lot of time. My new podcast, as you mentioned, is Let's Talk Memoir, and that's where it came out of, because those are contained conversations, but this is one where anyone who's watching can please ask a question or vent something that's bugging them about
Mm-hmm.
memoir, because
Mm-hmm.
memoir is sort of like an echo chamber, I think.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
much. And that's how this came out. You were like, oh yeah, let's do that. And hey
Mm-hmm.
Cindy, sorry. I'm like, I don't have any attention problems, but I just get really excited, and I want to like acknowledge the people who show up, because I'm a
Yes.
teacher. I'm a teacher at heart, and I just want to be like, thank you for being here.
Hi,
Um,
Jess. My
hey
friend Jess,
Jess.
my business partner, just showed
Hey,
up.
Allison's business partner, Jess.
Um,
So I guess the first thing I was going to ask you, and then you're going to throw some stuff back at me. And again, please pop in and say anything you want to in the
mm-hmm.
chat here. What do you like about memoir? Reading and writing it, Allison.
Well, this book is really good at just saying it eloquently.
You mean
And
this book?
this book, it, and I read an article yesterday about her appearance at LA Festival of Books, along with people whose names I'm not going to remember right now. But they were talking about how the act of writing itself can be an act of self-care. And then she talks about in the book about how it is also an act of personal reclamation, a radical act, and all of those things I can get behind. I have feelings of being an imposter when I write about myself, because I think like, oh really, I don't know. Where you hear, like Jane Friedman was talking about on your podcast, that people come to her with their books and they're like, oh, I'm super interesting, here's my story. That is not me. Like, I don't walk around with like, hey, I'm so great, or I'm so interesting, or so I really have to dig into that I'm doing this for myself.
So you have to settle down and kind of put your little memoir helmet on and be like, this is for me, I'm entitled to do this, and not worry about whether or not you have value in the world at large, even though of course I know you do. But you're saying that you need to kind of just settle down and do this for yourself, and not worry about the stakes or how the world will receive it, right? Yeah, and I feel that too. I think a lot of memoirists, at least maybe I could say the memoirists I want to read, are people who also believe that maybe they didn't need to write the story, or their story didn't matter that much. Like, because obviously, as Melissa Febos says in her book, which I'm just in the middle of right now, that she doesn't know any writers who are like, look at how great I am, you have to read my thing, let's look at my navel. Like I too had to be convinced by Deborah Gwartney, my first teacher, who I talked to and I talk about ad nauseum, because she really shaped things for me, that like, if you don't write your story, somebody else is going to write it for you, and of course you should write your story. And I wrote a piece for brevity a while ago when I was first embracing memoir, which is, you know, we don't have to out pain each other. We're not here to out, you know, trauma each other. It's not about that. And anyway, the same set of things could have happened to two people, and the way you interpret it is very different. That's why memoir is so elegant and so lovely and so. You know, what did she do? Marissa just wrote, I'm not interesting. What?
But I think my book is, LOL.
I don't know. I think it takes an interesting mind. I'm going to disagree, Marissa. I don't know you
I think your
personally.
social media is interesting. So
Yeah,
if that's any
true.
indication of what your book is like, I agree
Also,
wholeheartedly. I also think you're interesting.
Interrogate this too. Like, okay, let's suppose, I love your background. What are all those shiny, like celestial things?
It's my kid's bed because
Okay.
like you're in your basement.
Yeah.
I'm in the place where I get reception
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I
I
can't
gotcha.
hear my husband on his work calls.
Okay, got it. Yeah, sorry. See, I just did that attention thing again.
That's
But
okay.
so I think that you know, you might think that your life events aren't interesting, but let's say even if that were true, the way that you think, hi, the way you think about your life events could be incredibly interesting to a reader. So it's how you put your life events, and not your whole life, because this is not autobiography. This is memoir.
I thought she explained that really well.
Yes, autobiography.
I'm really name checking Jane Friedman, but I thought she did a really good job of like very succinctly making points that I feel when I read certain books. I'm like, this is too much.
Do you mean
of everything?
Do you mean that Jane Friedman came across as an expert?
Yeah. Coincidentally, she came off like an expert. Yeah.
You mean those 20 years she's had in the biz?
Experience.
Totally. Yes. It was so nice to hear her talk. I really like that. And it's true. I think what she said, and tell me if I'm right, and thank you for that lovely message, JLC, is
I agree, JLC. Ronit's book is so good.
Yesterday, so many nice things happened. I became the emoji with the crying tears. I was just like, woo! So anyway, I was going to say that she says autobiography is more the domain of celebrities, and an autobiography is from like the moment you were born until the very time you're writing the book. A memoir is a discrete container of time, which could be a month, it could be a week, it could be 2 years, it could be like a childhood, it could be, because that's what you're looking at to reflect and see what you can tease out of there. And so that's why I said to my husband, we were talking about this, when I first came to memoir, I didn't know much about it. And as I mentioned to the class I spoke with yesterday, I was a self-hating memoirist, 100%. And I didn't understand how people could write multiple memoirs. How could that happen? You know, like how, hey, Jody, like how could it be like, how could you write a book about your life when you're only 40 something years old and have multiple volumes? Like Mary Carr, for example, I was like, what? How could this be? You know, but you know, if you're a memoirist, you're a memoirist. And so I'm not a self-hating memoirist anymore. And I understand, like, I could write a memoir about, thank you. I could write a memoir about summer stock. I could do that. I could talk about all the bad things I did to my body and all the bad feelings I had about myself in summer stock, and that would be a memoir. But so that's why I love memoir. I adore it. And I think we were going to talk a little bit about, you know, what are some of the struggles in writing memoir? Is that what you wanted to talk a little bit about? Or did I pivot too fast?
Well, what was your answer to what gets you to write memoir?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what's your answer to your question?
Well, as I said, I did not want to write my memoir. I started as a fiction writer. I felt like I didn't have something worth telling. And then I thought that nonfiction would be smarter if it was more of like a personal essay than a memoir. I just really had this feeling that I didn't want to be like, where, my life, where, which is exactly what Melissa Febos is talking about and like railing against in her book. And she thinks it's a particularly female problem. And I'm curious about that. I'm wondering what people think about that. I do have a sense of like, I should be self-sufficient and I should, you know, be strong. And part of that is from my background as a Sabra, and part of that is being raised by my father. And so Jody is saying, isn't memoir the new term for creative nonfiction? I mean, it can be, but I think creative nonfiction also encompasses so many things. Like, for example, I think I have this book right here, which is our friend Madman in the Woods, is sort of a braided memoir, but also narrative nonfiction. So it kind of like covers the gamut, I think. I'm really just diving in now.
Well, Jane sort of talked about that a little bit too. She was saying more that is like, with memoir, you are the main character, the author is the main character, but with creative nonfiction, you are in it usually, but you are tackling a larger problem and you are you are part of it, but you're not the main character. So memoir is like, we're writing books where we're the main character.
Yes, exactly. And so I guess I liked memoir because it's changing all the time. I like it for many
Mhm.
reasons. Okay. I love it. I just wrote one. I enjoyed it. I might write another one in my life, but memoir is synonymous. What am I doing? So yeah, I can see you laughing.
Hi, I'm Ronit.
I
I'm a
wrote a memoir,
memoirist.
but yeah. Okay. I knew this was going to go like this. So obviously we're going to have to do this monthly. That's why I was like, just come because we'll talk. We have no shortage of talking. Also, we used to be in theater, both of us, right? So we used to
Yeah.
act, both of us. So forget it. You're done. Like you're done if you're watching this because it's going to be too engaging. But anyhow, I like the fact that I can look on events that happened and see them through a different lens depending on where I am. That memory, as one of my upcoming guests on Let's Talk Memoir talked about, is that memory is always changing every time we remember it. So basically, Christy likes that. So I think that you know, I could go back and write the same story differently. We could all, because we're writers
Mhm.
and we're changing all the time in our perception. And how you tell your
Mhm.
story of childhood now will change in 10 or 15 years a little bit from what you take away. So I just love how dynamic memoir is. And I
Yeah.
love being inside of someone. You know, like I just love, that sounds really weird and gross. I'm sorry. I
Well,
love being
we're not gonna. It's okay. There's no teenagers here.
I love
You're
putting on
okay. You're
somebody's
safe.
skin. I love being in somebody's skin. And shut up. Ah!
Now you sound like
By the
Hannibal Lecter.
way,
Not
no,
Hannibal Lecter, but the other
by the way, I want to say that I'm the queen of making innuendos by accident. So one thing I do, which you don't get in my memoir podcast or my writing because I can filter myself, but number one, I get idioms wrong all the time. And
guy.
number two, I say innuendo things all the time without realizing it. But in fiction, the best fiction that I enjoy are fiction where you can really feel like you're in the person's life and brain. Like I love that. And I
Hmm.
think that's part of why I like memoir. Whew!
Hmm.
Oh, I
Good
got there.
answer. Good
I got
answer.
there. I got there.
And I also think on that note, you were saying about how you remember things different. That got in my way of writing for so long because I would be like, well, I'm not going to feel this way in a year or 5 years or 10 years or, so I would
Mm-hmm.
kind of I was my own gatekeeper, which I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of us struggle with being our own gatekeeper. Like, oh,
Yes.
you know, I, I'm going to change. I'm going to evolve. I don't want to be this person. And I think Melissa Febos, she talks about that really well too, because she talks about Abandon Me. She talks about Whip Smart and how she looks back and cringes, but she doesn't
Mm.
regret writing the books because that's who
Mm-hmm.
she was then. And
Mm-hmm.
that was true to who she was. And that's also something I experience when I'm writing. I feel like the truth sort of filter down. I find that I can't write something that's not correct.
Oh, so
I,
that was blocking you because you felt like it has to be this absolute account, like
yeah.
absolute
Hmm.
journalistic or
Of
nonfiction,
my
right?
memory.
And that's okay. So I really want to talk about this, and you will love an upcoming episode because I talked to a doctor who has a brain science podcast, and we talked
Mm.
about memory specifically. She's not a memoirist, but
Hmm.
I'm bringing her to everyone because I want people to understand that
Hmm.
memory cannot be exact. And I actually just spoke with Philip Lopate, and he said the same thing. So I think that it's really important to remember this is not an exact account, but I want to say what you just said about Melissa Febos' different books and how she relates to those accounts is so important because just because Whip Smart is something or one of those books she wrote before is something she cringes at doesn't make the experience of that person in that book she's writing about any less valid. So we are all these people. And so we have so many different qualities within ourselves, and we're different people all the time. So to know that you have a body of work, whether they're poems or essays or fiction, short stories, memoir, all of these things are you. You are so vast as a person. So
Hmm.
it's okay to have an account of all these different people. And it's beautiful that Melissa Febos, who's this accomplished writer, can look back and say, oh, I cringe, but also they belong there too. Because
Hmm.
this person who is saying I cringe at that stuff is probably not going to cringe in 10 years. You know what I mean? Like we're all so different all the time, which is why it's okay. And the other thing about memoir is this. You may start off by writing your story for yourself to understand your story better, but you will find when you put your story out there that you will find people who it resonates with, who learn something, and who also feel that you were speaking to them. And that's why we read literature, I
Hmm.
think. You know,
I definitely do. And when I was
hi
younger,
Reba, that's my poetry
it
teacher.
helped. Oh, hi.
Yeah, go ahead. You said that helped you
It helped me feel less alone,
when you
like,
read those books, right?
yeah. And I even, it's funny, because social media is like an ongoing conversation we're always having, not you and I, but like our writing groups about
Yes.
platform and whatever.
Yes.
The way that I've found that it works for me is to explore what I want to say. And then when I get responses and people are like, oh, wow, that actually feeds my writing because I feel like, okay, well, people are responding to it here.
Mm.
They probably will respond to it in a longer form. It's how it has given me confidence because I feel like, well, at least these people are going to read my book, like,
Yeah. And,
and that does help.
I know you're not asking for this. I know this is not what you mean at all. But I mean, of course, I want to read your book. And of course, I want to see what you say. I mean, you're a great writer. You have so much passion. And, it's like, yes, C.S. Lewis has famously said that we write to know that we are not. And, I think that it is true. Like, I don't know what's going to come out of me. And, we understand things by writing. Writers understand things by writing, I think. I mean, other artists and other creatives do it differently, but I understand more about myself by writing and thinking. And in relation to what you said about social media, I do really think that, there's a time for being public and being out there, engaging what people are, how they're responding to your work. And there's a time to be inward and to write. And that's where the toggle is, I think, for me as a writer. Like, I've been in this really big zone of being out and like my book launch has just gone on and on. Like I mean, I had something yesterday, I have something tomorrow, and it's winding up a year later, which is great. And then and I've been doing these podcasts, which I'm done with the interviews right now. So like, then it's going to be inward and writing on my next project. But I think there's seasons for writers. There's all these seasons, and like and the seasons can be within a day or a week. You could be having a very public week where you're out there in front of people as a writer, and then you go into your tiny little capsule, as I say, your memoir helmet, and you put it on, and you just like, you echo chamber up. And I think it all feeds us.
I agree. I mean, I am not a person who writes every day. So I totally agree with that.
Me neither.
I don't have that kind of routine or structure, and that's not me. So everybody's different. We're coming close to being 25 minutes in, so I didn't know if we wanted to just do a quick 5-minute writing.
You want to do a little prompt, everyone
yes.
who's here? You want to do a little prompt with us?
And this is no having to share it out.
Yeah, it's just for you. It's just for you.
And I'm just going to go with Melissa Febos because, well, this is her themed episode.
We should have just called it her episode.
Yeah. I'm not going to be able to find it here because I was like, oh, the book, and I ran and got it. But she talks about in her writing classes how she has her students write about their sex life for 5 minutes, like an overarching view of their sex life. And then she has them do it again and again and again for 5 minutes. So that's something that you can do on your own. But I thought she said, at first they're like, oh God, like, I don't want to write about this. And it's cute because they're college students. So they're like deep in it.
Into sex.
Yeah. And like finding themselves and like, what does it all mean? And I think, and I'll name check a different memoirist, Gina Frangello, she talks about sex in your midlife. And I don't think we talk enough about it, And so I think it's cool to just say, hey, we also have sex lives. Or we've chosen not to, or whatever. But like, we didn't just stop.
Yes, and I think our sex life, like for the purpose of this exercise too, it could be, all your thoughts about your sex life or what your impressions and judgments are. And don't write and drive. Jody just wrote, I'm driving and listening.
Please, yes, do not drive.
But we'll enjoy what everyone else writes. Yes, please be responsible with your writing prompt.
But we're not going to share out.
No, we're not.
Because that's a bit too, like, we just met each other. So we don't want to go there. But
no.
This is something that I'm in the process of writing about right now because I always write about sex in my projects because I always feel like women don't write about it enough.
And that's funny because I never write about sex in my projects. I have a short story in my upcoming collection that comes the closest to like a sex scene, but even that I was like, boop. I was like, and they blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
So even in film school, almost every short film.
Good for you.
And I'm proud of how many cis white men I made very uncomfortable. So that is something I'm proud of. And maybe I can continue.
So 5 minutes on the clock?
I can't do it. Can someone else do it? Because we're on our phones. Or we can just look up at the thing.
I see it for some reason. I can see it's 11:25. So we're going to write.
Okay. 5 minutes.
Anyhow, so write for 5 minutes and then we'll like meet up before we let you all go. Okay? Just do
Sounds
it.
good.
Get some paper or something. For anyone who's just joining now, this is a writing prompt. Okay, that's about 5 minutes. Finish up your last.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Did you type or did you write?
I typed. I hope I wasn't too annoying.
No,
I was
not
like,
at all. I wrote,
okay.
but I remember exactly how weak I am from never using a pen or a pencil anymore.
I
Ugh,
love that Marissa used to write erotica in college. I
girl. Yeah.
I was given that suggestion by friends like back in the day. They were like, you should write erotica like on the side. But I really couldn't write it with I couldn't do it. Even though
What?
have written a lot of sex, I couldn't get into like the the nuts and bolts, to use an unfortunate term. But I felt
You
like
couldn't get
erotica needed to
inside. You
be,
couldn't get
yeah,
inside people.
I couldn't get inside them. Like as much as I felt like I needed to really be
Yeah.
successful in that genre.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, go Marissa.
Yeah. Go,
But you think you
Marissa.
were nuts now. I feel like you should write an essay about that.
Yeah. Why don't you write an essay about that? I'll read that. Do you know Craig Falcon?
Craig is a supporter of Reburn. Hi, Craig.
Hey.
Reburn, a snappy one-word title, just to bring it full circle.
Yes. So what do we want to do? Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Let's wind this up. Do we want to tell people that we're going to do this again,
We'll be back.
and we'll be back. And it's so old and dated. I'm sorry.
I
And
don't. I think this audience.
do you
is
want to
with
know
us.
something? I never even saw that movie.
Oh well,
Isn't that
I
ridiculous?
have.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so listen, we'll do this again, like I think in a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we can't keep ourselves from doing it sooner. And I think we should cover different things,
Yeah.
like we can take suggestions and we can
Mm-hmm.
focus ourselves up. And also, truly, I want to welcome anyone who is watching to, write something up to us and say like, hey, I really am irritated with this aspect of memoir, or
Mm-hmm.
what would you do in this situation? Or, I love answering those kinds of questions from my own experience and from the people I've interviewed. So, and in the meantime, you should do a shout out for your work, Alyson, Reburn and
Hi,
stuff.
Corey. Hi, John. Sorry, I know them too. I'm saying hi. There are also supporters of Reburn, which is a
Reburn!
snappy one-word title. That is a comic book that I created and wrote that just wrapped up their Kickstarter. If you're interested,
And
you
you
can
did great
always
on that Kickstarter.
DM me.
Yeah.
Yes. I should start a Kickstarter support group. Because
Wait, when is it coming out? So now that it's funded, when will that come out?
So now we go to the printers, and it's that whole process of proving the proof and getting it printed and shipped out, and it's a business, as I'm sure
Yeah.
you understand since you have your own business. You sort of get in these spaces, I think, when you tire of waiting for someone else to make it happen for you, which
Yeah,
I think
that's
is a
true.
very empowered place to be.
Especially as
Because
a writer. Yeah.
because I used to be much more in the space of like, oh, I need an agent, I need a manager, and now I'm just like, I just need to write. That's what I need to do.
Yes, and there are so many other ways to publish these days. And one thing that, it's not that I'm against an agent. I probably will seek one out for another project I'm working on, but I also understand that's not the only way to do it. And also that if you have an agent, it does not mean that you're going to get your book sold at all. And, it's like a crapshoot. And there's so many amazing university presses, indie presses that I got to talk with, in fact, at AWP. So that's also another talk we can do. So,
oh, we should do that. I really want to. I
I'd
know
love to
about
talk about that.
Nebraska because I know so many people who are published there for some reason, but I don't feel like I know a lot about. We should talk
Northwestern.
about that.
I met Northwestern.
I know about that because I went there. But
oh yeah. But also, yeah, I was also going to say like, yes. And if you want more memoir resources, I do have, so you can go to my website, ronitplank.com. You can find every time I do an episode of Let's Talk Memoir, which again is a plug, but it's my podcast about memoir, there are in the show notes links to articles the authors I interview talk about, other books they mentioned that really help them. So you can use that as a resource. You can listen to it. And I have another episode coming out on Tuesday. And I just love talking memoir. So, I'm kind of a broken record at this point. Yeah.
it's good. I love it.
Yeah.
So thank you for reaching out to me about this, Ronit. It was such a pleasure. Thanks to everyone who came by.
Thanks for
What a
coming
good
by.
Instagram live
And
turnout.
hopefully you'll come by again.
Yes,
Next time.
and definitely DM us or comment or whatever with things that you would like to see or hear.
Definitely.
Because we're going to be here talking, so you should give us something to talk about. This is my opinion. So,
all right. Well, thanks, Alyson, for hosting.
thank you. Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Happy writing. Mwah.
Yes.